Welcome in, Magic fans, to another episode of the Magic Happy Hour by Happy Hour Sports. I am your host, Shell Michael. And first things first, I apologize for the longer than usual delay in between episodes. The Magic took a break, so I did too. Since we last spoke, the Magic had a less than stellar game against the Knicks in the NBA Cup semifinals in Vegas, losing Jalen Suggs in the process. The Spurs somehow handed the Thunder only their second loss of the season, and then the Knicks pulled off a pretty nice comeback win against those very same Spurs to bring home the coveted and then forgotten NBA Cup trophy, for which they say they will not be hanging a banner in Madison Square Garden, even though both the Lakers and the Bucks hung one for their respective wins. But first, I don't want to spend a ton of time discussing the semifinals loss to the Knicks, although I'm sure I will, but it was just apparent that this really wasn't our best brand of Magic basketball, and I don't know how much there truly is to take from a game like that. I'm not taking anything away from New York. They are a tough team when the lights are the brightest, and their starting five all played very well, whereas our starting five for the Magic really didn't, or I mean, they had decent games. They just couldn't match what New York was doing. But all five of New York starters scored in double digits. All five of Orlando Magic's starters scored in double digits. But defense was our problem in that game. New York had already had 71 points by halftime, and that is the first and most evident indicator that we just were not playing up to our standard. The other big indicator was that Orlando was just settling for a lot of jump shots, which already doesn't put enough pressure on the New York Knicks defense, but also doesn't put enough pressure on the refs to call fouls. And when you add to that a couple of individual performances that I wanted to touch on, Paolo Banchero's, Anthony Black's, and then also Jalen Brunson's, the game just went about as you would expect from the eye test alone, if nothing else. So first, Paolo Banchero, love to talk about his game, but this was a rough one for him. He is still very obviously recuperating from his groin injury. Just seems like we may have brought him back a little too soon. He seems to be lacking some of that signature explosivity that is that a word? Explosivity? Anyway, he's used to having explosive plays, and he just seems to be missing that. And for most of the game, it just looked like his feet were stuck in the mud the whole game. He went 0 of 7 from 3 point range and somehow still scored 25 points on a somewhat decent percentage of 45.5%. But he committed 5 turnovers in that New York Knicks game, and that's more than anybody else who played in the game. So I don't know if I'm ever going to get to meet Paolo Banchero in real life, but if I do, I really just want to let him know that when he dribbles into coverage and then turns and backs down an opponent, literally everybody and their mama knows he's about to spin move out of it. And when you become predictable enough, like he is with that move in particular, the other team knows it. They're ready to pick off the ball when you're in the spin. And I know if I can see it from home, the opponents are seeing it on the court. They're seeing it in the scouting report. They're seeing it on film. And New York's already a good defensive team as it is. We just can't be giving them the easy ones. But Anthony Black is another guy I wanted to talk about in that New York Knicks game. He started in place of Franz Wagner, still out with a high ankle sprain. Anthony Black has been a really nice piece for us this year, but we are still seeing him struggle with consistency. He's the kind of guy that's going to rip your throat out one game, and then the very next game, he's going to be invisible. And I think in that game on Saturday, we got the invisible Anthony Black. So he scored 12 points on 33.3% shooting. He was 5 of 15. But he only went 1 of 6 from deep. He did get a steal and 2 blocks, so he's still playing, that pesky defense that he seemed to pick up from Jalen Suggs. But Anthony Black, like Paolo Banchero, struggled with turnovers. He committed 4 himself. And it just appeared to me that Anthony Black was getting a little frustrated with the lack of a favorable whistle. He let it affect him. He let it affect his body language, which in turn seemed to affect some of his teammates around him as well. But Jalen Brunson, you can't talk about this game without talking about Brunson. He dropped a 40 burger on the Magic on Saturday. We let him go off, and he did manage to get in a little bit of foul trouble, which Orlando has done a good job. When we've played the Knicks, we've done a good job of getting Jalen Brunson into some foul trouble. It just didn't seem to matter. He did finish the game with 5 personal fouls. But I wish I had kept track on this game. I've done it in the past. But I wish I had kept track in this game how many fouls he drew on us that night. It was a little ridiculous. And I think this bears talking about because New York Knicks fans will always say the same thing when people talk about Jalen Brunson being a foul baiter. They'll be like, "Oh, Jalen Brunson, he's not even leading the list of free throw attempts," and they think that that really proves their point. But not every foul that he baits players into committing results in free throw attempts. He does it a lot when he's on defense and the other team has the ball. He'll bait people into doing offensive fouls that maybe they're not in the bonus yet, and it ends up just flipping the court. But he has this knack for initiating contact, and then making it look like you did it, and then he flops to the court and he starts screaming about it. He is undoubtedly one of the most gifted offensive players in the league, but sometimes watching him play, it's like watching Robin Hood resort to cheating in an archery contest. Like, bro, you don't got to do all that to win. But the Magic, we had vast minutes in that New York Knicks game where we had our bench guys playing against their starters. And that's fine if your bench is playing well, but ours wasn't that night. We got 25 points total from our bench, and 9 of those points were from Jace Richardson when it was already pretty obvious that we weren't going to win the game. Tristan da Silva went 0-5 in the game. Oh, my bad. Goga Batadze didn't even attempt a shot. Tyus Jones, Jonathan Isaac, and Jet Howard scored 3, 5, and 8 points respectively. And their minutes, by and large, at least in my opinion, were where we saw the New York Knicks piling on. And I've talked about this, not just in my last video, but I've talked about this in the past. But I'm absolutely going to downplay this loss because all it really amounts to at the end of the day is it's one regular season defeat. We know that we're in a rough patch of our schedule with the easier stretch to come about 2 weeks when the calendar flips over to 2026. But the toughest part of losing to the Knicks was that we lose the advantage of the head-to-head tiebreaker. If we hadn't made it into the Cup semifinals against them, so if we had lost to Miami, or heck, if we'd never even made it out of group play, we would have played somebody else. The NBA would have scheduled us somebody else. Or if we lost to Miami, we would have, we would have played the loser. So we would have played the Toronto Raptors because the Raptors lost to the Knicks, and we would have maintained our 2-1 game advantage over the New York Knicks. That last game on Saturday against them was not originally a scheduled game for the Orlando Magic. They were only supposed to play the Knicks 3 times this year, and like I said, we went 2-1 in those 3 games. So I'm really hoping that this doesn't come back to bite us at the end of the season. But the East is so closely bunched up right now. It seriously would not surprise me if a lot of teams see some tiebreaker scenarios come into play. Another sour note before we move on from the Knicks. See, I said I didn't want to dwell on this game, and here I am 10, 15 minutes into this still talking about it. But another one, the other sour note, we lost Jalen Suggs in this game. One of the only guys that was having a truly good game that day. And not only is this the second consecutive year where we lose Paolo first, then we lose Franz, and then we lose Jalen Suggs in that order, but this year, all 3 of those injuries were against the New York Knicks. Paolo injured his groin muscle on his birthday in New York. We did end up winning the game after his exit, but then we lost Franz Wagner on our next trip up to MSG for that noon game a couple weeks ago when Ariel Hukporti blocked Franz from behind. He came down awkwardly on that knee and on that foot. And now here we are in Vegas, and we lose Jalen Suggs to what the team is calling a hip contusion, which is essentially just like a bruise. I'm assuming like a bad bone bruise on his hip, but we don't know how long he's going to be out. Jalen Suggs, anybody who's been watching the games would have been able to tell you this, even coming into that Knicks game in Vegas, he had already been fighting through what to me looked like a groin injury. There was times where he would hit the ground and just be holding on that muscle on the inside of his leg. He'd already been battling through that. But in the New York game, it just looked like it all caught up to him. And he's just the kind of player that's going to die on the court if you let him. But moving on, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The Magic are undoubtedly in a rough stretch of the schedule, not just in the quality of the opponents over the next couple weeks, but also in the available players that we have, the injuries that the guys that are playing are fighting through themselves, and with the tough travel of this West Coast road trip. I want to draw that into a clear focus, though, because the Magic are still slated to play 8 of their next 11 games on the road. It was 9 of 12 when you include the Nuggets game tonight in Denver. But I think we, Magic fans collectively, need to brace for some tough losses and some tough conversations, because we do have probably like a 6 or 7 game stretch here where it's going to be kind of rough. But it's not all doom, gloom, and despair. Franz Wagner and Mo Wagner should both be back soon. Paolo's getting better each day. Jalen Suggs should be coming back soon with no structural damage to his hip. And like I said, the schedule will be lightening up considerably here soon. And hopefully we're going to see some more promising play from Jace Richardson. Jace played very well in the limited minutes that he got Saturday in Vegas, but then also tonight against Denver. I am going to talk about that game as well here in just a moment. But Jace Richardson, man, he might mess around and find himself getting regular rotation minutes if he's not careful. He's quick, he's crafty, he shoots well. He never really seems overwhelmed by the moment, by anything that he's facing. And I can just truly see him being a very important piece for the Orlando Magic in the not too distant future. But even if you take a step back and look at the club holistically, things are looking up. I want to quote 3 important statistics here that are all using the per 100 possessions parameter, because these are all pretty telling. And I think the per 100 possessions parameter does give you some pretty decent context. But first, the Magic rank as the league's second most improved offensive team from last year to this year, having scored 6.7 more points per 100 possessions than they did last season. Now, maybe that's not saying too much because we were so bad offensively last year, and where else could we go but up? But for me, that is a super encouraging trend to see. Now, another positive is that the backcourt for the Magic have been playing extremely well, especially when they're all together. The Magic have outscored their opponents by 30.8 points per 100 possessions in the 92 minutes that we've had with Anthony Black, Jalen Suggs, and Desmond Bane all on the floor together. Now, from a layman's viewpoint, me just sitting on my couch watching the games, I would say that is due to their combination of shooting and their defensive discipline that really makes them so dangerous. But we've got to get Jalen Suggs healthy enough and get him back, because the final of these 3 statistics I wanted to quote to you was that the Orlando Magic have been 10.3 points per 100 possessions better with Jalen Suggs on the floor than they have been with him off the floor. Like we go from a plus 9.6 with him on the floor to a minus 0.7 with him off. So the Magic, we've already played 4 games against the league's second-ranked offense, that of the New York Knicks. And tonight, we faced the number 1 offense in the league in the Denver Nuggets. If I do my usual deep dive into this game, this video is going to be way longer than I want it to be, and it's already late. I stayed up watching the game, and since it was in Denver, everything I'm doing right now is 2 hours later than I usually do it. But in this Denver game tonight, the first and fourth quarters of this game were great for Orlando. We got off to a phenomenal start, and then in the end, when we were down by a bunch, we made a pretty strong push. It looked like we were going to make a game out of it. But the Magic were still without 2 of our best 4 players. So, like I said, Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner, we knew about those. We're still missing Mo Wagner. Again, we know about that one. But for some reason, we were also without Jonathan Isaac and Tristan da Silva tonight as well. That means with our starting 5, we only had 4 reserves. And our starting 5 included Tyus Jones and Anthony Black. So Tyus was starting for Jalen, ostensibly, and Anthony Black starting in place for Franz Wagner. So our 4 reserves are our 2 rookies, Jace Richardson, Noah Penda, and then we still had Goga Batadze and who am I forgetting? Jet Howard. Jet Howard was our other one. So we only had 4 reserves tonight. And the Magic did have a win, was this last year or the year before in Denver when we were extremely shorthanded. And when the game started tonight, it seriously looked like it was going to continue that way. Our 3-point shooting was phenomenal to start the game, and Denver's was garbage. And then the script completely flipped. Jamal Murray recovered from a horribly slow start to essentially catch fire from deep. Orlando went the opposite direction. We started hot, and then everybody cooled off substantially. And I will say this, it did suck watching Jamal Murray go off. But Orlando has shown in the past, even this year, that we are fully capable of letting one guy just go absolutely bananas and score at will as long as we defend all the other guys. But for Denver, one of those other guys is Nikola Jokic. It's just not a good recipe for us. So there was some silver lining I do want to discuss from this game. Um, both the rookies looked great tonight. Jet Howard looked great tonight. Paolo Banchero did have a triple double tonight somehow. Um, and Wendell Carter Jr. had a great game, both in general and from the 3 point line. We did have too many missed free throw attempts, Paolo especially. 4 different times tonight, he split his 2 free throws that he earned. So he's still doing what he does, which is to drive to the basket, put the pressure on the defense, put the pressure on the refs to blow the whistle. He's still making it to the free throw line, but it just seems like he still doesn't have his legs under him. When you miss one of the 2 free throws that you're granted, we're you're being rewarded for your aggression getting to the basket, but you're not capitalizing on it. And again, I've talked about Paolo Banchero just looking like he's running through mud. Now we're talking about he's missed 4 free throws in this game because maybe his legs just don't seem like they're under him. And I could probably point to you 5 or 6 different field goal attempts tonight where they were just short, especially from deep. So missed free throws though. Noah Penda went 0 of 2. Anthony Black missed 2 free throws. And I will say that Orlando tonight did a great job of limiting turnovers, which is awesome. But I really think we could have won this game still, even with everything that I've already talked about, if Desmond Bane had even had a decent game. But instead, he went 3 of 12 for 6 points and 0 of 5 from distance. But the Magic, with that loss tonight against Denver, they fall to 15 and 12. Tonight's game was the first game of a 4-game road trip in the West Coast. We still have games coming up against the Utah Jazz, the Golden State Warriors, and the Portland Trailblazers still to come. Now, look, we owe the Utah Jazz for beating us twice last year. Both of those were extremely painful losses, especially the one in Orlando. But I already know for a fact the Portland Trailblazers and the Golden State Warriors are going to be wanting revenge on us for beating them earlier this year in Orlando, especially Portland, who we beat on that iconic buzzer beater by Desmond Bane. But even when we make it back home after Christmas, after this 4-game West Coast road trip, what do we get rewarded with? We get rewarded with a back-to-back home games on December 26th and December 27th against Charlotte and then Denver. Yeah, you heard that right. The Denver Nuggets again, and this time on the second night of a back-to-back. Now, this is the part of the video I really wanted to get to. I'm going to quickly run through the next 15 games after that home contest against the Nuggets because I want to show you all the silver lining that I see. December 29th at Toronto. First off, I do want to park here for just a moment. I've been saying for a long while that Toronto is not as good as their record says they are. I'm really looking forward to our guys having a chance to prove that. But after that game in Toronto, December 31st at Indiana, they're finally showing signs of life, but we should still have that one. Then we travel to Chicago to face the Bulls for our first game in the new year on January 2nd. We host the Pacers January 4th, and then we travel to Washington and Brooklyn, who currently have 11 wins between the two of them. We're home for the Sixers, a little bit tougher of a matchup, but at least it's home in Orlando. And then we host the Pelicans on Sunday, January 11th for a 3 p.m. matchup, which is always odd when you get these afternoon matchups. But after that New Orleans game, which again should be a gimme, New Orleans is terrible this year. But after that, the Magic's next 2 games are in Berlin, Germany, and London, England, both against the Memphis Grizzlies. And the Memphis Grizzlies, they finally seemed to have gotten their act together, but Orlando should and will, I imagine, be favored in both of those matchups unless something catastrophic happens, knock on wood. But by that Berlin, Germany game, by God, we better have Franz Wagner back in time for that Germany game, and hopefully Mo Wagner as well. But after those 2 international games, the final 5 games of January are as follows. We are at home against the Hornets, at home against the Cavs, Then we get the Cavs again, but this time in Cleveland. Then we're down in Miami for our first time this year playing in Miami. And then finally, we're back home in the Kia Center to host the Toronto Raptors. Now, those Cleveland Cavalier games look far less scary now than they did at the start of the season, but we still know that they're capable of hurting us. But I just look at that stretch when I see those two games against Charlotte, two against Toronto, two against the Cavs, two against the Pacers, two against Memphis, one each against Washington, Brooklyn, and New Orleans, and my eyes just tend to light up a little bit, especially considering the other bright spots that I mentioned earlier in this video. So hopefully I was able to get you all caught up on the past week or so and set the table a bit for the month to come. I will try to keep pace with the team as regards putting out new episodes as the Magic keep having new games to talk about. But we are heading into the holiday season, and I still got my regular 9 to 5 to handle as well. But if you are still tuned in at this moment and hearing my voice at this moment, I just want to thank you for making me and my tiny corner of the internet part of your day. Please do hit that like button below, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Magic Happy Hour. Thank you.